I think that, like most Americans, whether you were voting for Trump or Clinton, there was a lot of surprise given the fact that the media and the polls had been indicating that it would have been a win for Clinton. So I think, regardless of who someone was voting for in the presidential election, sometimes it was a pleasant surprise, depending on who you voted for. For others, it was a shock and more of a disappointment. I hope this election means that not only for women, but for anyone who feels that their voice has not been heard or that they are not being represented by their government, that this is a call to action, a time for them to really think about how they can become more involved in government, and that actually happens most effectively on the local level. I hope that as more women perhaps become more vocal, start running for more office, which there has been a number of articles in the New York Times and other publications sort of suggesting that we will see a surge in more female candidates, that will have an even more positive view of women going forward. One of the things that troubled me most about the election was the way in which a lot of sexist rhetoric was used in the campaign, and that, whether it was just kind of geared toward Hillary Clinton, has a negative effect on women in general in society. And so I think it's important that we have voices that are constantly combating those sexist images, that we continue to have more women in roles of power. Again, it's not just sort of having women in those positions, but that they're advocating for women's causes such as paid maternity leave, or reproductive justice and health rights. So it's not just the representation of women, but that women's issues and issues, again, that benefit people who are typically left out of some of these really important decisions are being heard. I think that if students are feeling perhaps confused after the election or unsure of how they can make a difference, this is a really great time to begin getting civically engaged in your local communities, start paying attention to factual media. There's been a lot of talk about how the role of social media and Facebook and kind of false news reporting and how that may or may not have affected the election. And so I think for young people especially, really paying attention to where do you get your sources of information and being well informed. A lot of times students say, well, I'm not going to vote because I don't know enough about the issues. And really, there's a lot of ways that you can get informed about those issues really quickly. So in terms of what the next 4 years will hold, as we kind of learned from this election, that we don't have a crystal ball and things don't always turn out the way that we thought. And so my hope, rather, is that we continue to see more, more advocacy, more women's voices being heard, with the planned march on the day after the election in Washington, D.C. and in some of the cities, nationwide. I think that that's a really interesting start to see what the direction of these 4 years can be.